first of all, can you tell me a bit about how the first book came about and how did it all start?
I Want My Hat Back came about, I'd gotten into book illustration, but I had to write my own somehow. And I hate drawing characters, actually. I don't like to do it. When I'd started those books, I was a set designer. I did chairs and rocks and trees, and they were very quiet and didn't have to do anything. But I wanted to find a story that would allow the same thing, and so I had this idea for these animals that just stared at me.
Did you get a publishing deal, or did you come up with so you came up with the story first?
Story first, and we showed it to a lot of publishers, and which I think like 10 or 11, and all of them said, we can't do this. We can't have this ending, except for Liz Bicknell at Candlewick, who it turns out is British, but she was working in the States, and her question to me was, if we do this, can we do more books with these animals? And I thought, yeah, at the time, I thought, yeah, we should do, I like these guys, let's make more books. And she says, okay, if that's the case, does the rabbit come back in the other books? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe he just plays a character that meets his end in this book instead of actually meets his end. So I said, if you want, he can come back. And she said, I disagree. I think if he's gone here, he's gone forever. And that was such a different reaction to everybody else in the States who was like, you can't kill
Do you think that's anything to do with being British?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm Canadian, and so we grew up on British television and British stories. There's a lot of crossover, and so I think...
So there's not the happy ending that you might expect.
I always thought it was a happy ending, though. The rabbit is killed. That's what you want to have happen. I don't know if it's the right ending morally, but I thought as far as what you hope to have happen, that is what you hope to have happen.
I don't know if I think that, but I really think that the ending is part of what makes me love the book more.
I couldn't figure out how to change it. When the publishers said, maybe a different ending, as soon as I took the ending out, the whole book just fell apart. I wasn't driving to anything I was interested in. It doesn't mean what the bear does is right. I think that's the distinction that a lot of parents have trouble with, is that they're like, well, what are we meant to learn from here? But that's a big question, is whether you're meant to learn from these books or whether you're just meant to enjoy them as stories. When do kids begin to deserve things just for the sake of them? And it's a big question in children's literature, but I imagine with children's things generally, is that like, are these meant to instruct and bring up and improve our children somehow? Or can they just have something today? And I think I've always believed in the second thing.
Exactly. Just have something funny and they're kind of a little bit surprised and it makes you react.
And there is an edge on it, and I think some kids like an edge. I always did.
I think so too. Actually, that is one of my questions. Do you have any really, like, in your childhood, books that you really loved reading all the time?
Yes.
Do you remember this book called, I don't remember what it's called, but I think it was Canadian, and I've tried to find it again, and it's about a moose who has a cold. And it's the moose, the most Canadian sounding
book I've ever. It's called Horace.
Morris
the moose.
And I remember looking it up once because I loved that as a story as a kid. And I can't remember what the other characters were, but he's got really like cold and he's got tissues and things.
I don't know it, and I'm gonna. If our Canadian viewers, I'm so sorry.
It's a collectible book.
Is it? Is it from the 60s or the 70s, or when is it from?
Must be the 70s because I was born in 77, so it's like it must be late 70s.
Well, that is the weird thing, is that I grew up with older books. The only books that we had any sort of direct access to a lot were my dad's books from when he was a kid. And so weirdly, and Mac, who I work with a lot, Barnett, we the same way. We sort of had this time capsule experience with picture books that are much beyond, like further back than we would normally have had. We didn't grow up with books from the 90s as much as we grew up from books from the 60s and 70s.
Okay, right.
And so,
I
feel bad I don't know it. It's probably a Canadian classic. I didn't have it.
But I tried to look for it, and it was like over $100 or something for this really old. So it must be collectible. Anyway, what were your favorite books then?
My favorite book was a couple of them. In the States, there's Arnold Lobel, who did the Frog and Toad books, and those are still very, very big. I don't know if you have them. No, I think they're gaining traction a little bit. It's about a frog and a toad who wears like little waistcoats and stuff, and they wander around the woods. But they are also very complicated. Frog and Toad, over the course of many, many stories, it never resolves this, but there's an imbalance in their relationship. Toad is very desperate for Frog's friendship and his company. And Frog enjoys Toad, but doesn't need it the same way. And a lot of the stories address this, and some of them don't at all. But every now and then, it gets really dire with Frog and Toad. But they never solve this, and I remember thinking, this is so interesting that some relationships are just like this. Because already, when I was a kid, you have friendships who are like, oh yeah, I think maybe I like them more than they like me, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so many children's books are like, we're all friends, right? Treat your friends nicely, everyone be nice, and we're all good friends.
Yeah.
But no, that's not how children work either. They have complex relationships. I remember reading Frog and Toad and thinking, I know this. I have friends like this, both ways. And the other one I liked a lot was P.D. Eastman, who's another American. He did one called Go Dog Go, and one called Sam and the Firefly, which is the most beautiful. It's very simple. The stories are just very straightforward, but for some reason he has this way of abstracting space. All of his books feel like dreams to me, and I still love them, admire them a lot.
Oh,
Yeah, they're great.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
Are any of the characters in your books based on friends or people you know?
Increasingly, I don't think I knew how to write, and I don't think you knew you were supposed to do that, but whenever a book ends up working in the writing, it's because I've thought of someone a little bit. My brothers a lot. I have two younger brothers, Will and Justin, and they come into it a lot. They almost, because I miss them now, I don't live close by, and so a lot of them end up being like kind of imagined dialogues between us, or like just even exaggerations of their characters and sort of putting us all in a room together and seeing what happens.
I know, it's so great when you have kids and you've got two boys, I've got two boys.
Yeah.
They're so different in character that you're like, how did the genes make these two completely
I know, same equipment
people?
and like where is this coming from? Yeah, it is so wild. And all you have to do is put them in a room together, even in your head, and you have a book. Like a very simple premise of like, there's two of you, there's one hat, what happens? That's it. It happens right away. Like, what happens?
A lot of fighting.
Yeah, a lot of fighting. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
In the original book that we're talking about, did anything get edited out?
One page.
Oh.
I want my hat back. It was the craziest experience. I've never had a book go like this before, but basically what the book that's published is the one I wrote in about 15 minutes when I finally figured out what it was.
Wow.
That's never happened since. I was very spoiled.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about pagination. Picture books, you only get a certain signature, which means that you can have like 32 pages, but if you add a page, you have to add 5 pages, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we were one shy of the pigment signature that we want. I had to remove the spread. After the bear has realized that the rabbit has his hat, he's running back past everybody. There was a page where now that the turtle is up on the rock, he can see further, and he's running back past the turtle on a separate page, and the turtle says, "I saw your hat," and the bear's already almost off the page, and he goes, "I know where it is, thank you anyway," and he's already off. And I really loved the page. It didn't further the story at all, but it was something of the turtle sort of being like, I can help, now that I'm up here I can help, and I missed the moment, but it was really the only one that we could take out that didn't make the story fall down. But I do miss that page.
Oh, that sounds like a good page.
Also, anyways, the whole book was written with "okay, thank you, anyways." The bear has this refrain where he says "okay, thank you, anyway" in the book. I had it written anyways, which isn't correct, but I thought it was endearing that he didn't quite know how to speak.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it past the copyright people. They didn't let me have anyways.
I think a lot of people say that, don't they? Is that an American?
I don't know. It doesn't sound correct, but there was something endearing about it. I liked that he was messing it up.
Why do you think it had such a massive appeal?
Don't know.
Don't know.
No.
Did you know it would before it?
No.
No.
When I pitched it initially, there was a long time where we thought we weren't going to get to publish it, and I thought it wasn't worth it. Then you reflect. I don't know if you feel this way with your things, but if it doesn't go well in the world, it takes a lot of strength of character that I didn't have then to think it's still good though. Like I was so
you
reactive.
need that recognition,
yeah,
don't you?
you shouldn't, but you do. At least, especially in the early days. And so, when the only reactions we were getting from publishers was that like this isn't doable, or we're not excited to make this particular version, I thought, well then it's not worth doing. And I have to remember that later, like years later after it's done all this stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I had all this conscious thought and way about it, but I didn't. It was
just
you're very reactive, I think.
Yeah.
And so I didn't expect. No, I don't. And I didn't know the landscape. I didn't know what we were putting it into. I didn't know what it felt like relative to other books. I was coming from animation, mostly, and so putting it into this ecosystem of picture books, I didn't know what it was going to do. I had no idea. I knew, and even bringing it around initially, pitching the book to different publishers or different booksellers, even after it was published. My only way of pitching it was to read it to them, and so I would hold the book like this and read it, but I can't do that very well. I'm not good at it, and so I wouldn't look up for the whole book, and then I finally close the book and look up, and the reaction was so different every time. Either they were enthralled and really happy with the book, or they looked at me like I'd just killed a rabbit in front of them on the table, and like I couldn't sit in the middle there. I didn't know what I had, because I was like, do you hate it or do you love it?
Yeah.
What is this? What do we have? And so it's
and you still want them to love it as well, don't you?
You want them, yeah. Yes, I don't have that sort of like, I know it's still good, but I don't have that.
I know. Well, that's probably what's so nice about it as well. It's a surprise. And kind of that's all I was going to ask you, apart from maybe where do you get your inspiration from now? I know it's really hard because you get bombarded with things all the time.
Lately it's been toy design, actually. It's people like what you guys do. It's this elegant sort of way of designing. I'm more and more attracted to stories and even books that don't necessarily have a story or a villain or a problem, but they're like more ambient experiences that children are actually more capable of being satisfied with than adults, I think. If you give them a place to live in for a while and it's a feeling they want to return to, that's enough of a hook for especially young kids. And crafting that and finding out what makes enough of it to make it worthwhile is so interesting. And I feel like you guys do that too, where it's like, this is experiential, this is about like a vibe, for lack of a better term, that we're creating, that you have a fond memory of. And they're able to fill in those gaps and make places. But I feel like you guys make a place here with this stuff. And it's like there's a feeling of going into somewhere and living either in your head or in the collective heads of the shop. But it's a place, and I think that that's just as hard to do right as a story or whatever makes a story work in a mechanical way. And so lately it's been more and more like toy design and historical, like just that kind of more experiential, much more ambient stuff, and then hopefully get a story out of it. But like that first step, how do you make a place? How do you make like a weird dreamy space for them to just hang out in, has been more and more interesting.
Well, that's amazing.
But that's why it's so good to be
nice
here and do this
into
work.
John's mind.
Is that how you feel about it though? Is it making a place? Are you guarding the rules of a place when you're making these things?
Yeah, I think so. I think I probably hadn't thought about it until a bit further into my career that I was doing that, because then I started to try and make other objects or animals that
broke it.
No, well, stayed within that or
I
elaborated on that world.
Risked breaking it, but wouldn't.
Yeah, and then I had the trees, and then I had so the whole world started appearing. And, how do you keep it kind of consistent, but move it on as well, and keep it moving on, and new and fresh for yourself. But also have that same language and.
Do you find that, like, I feel like it takes less than you thought? The more mature I feel like you hopefully get, it's less complicated than you thought when I was younger, where it's like, it's a distillation process rather than a complicating process.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps if it's
hopefully
less
even in practice, to make it less complicated.
Because I think you do so much intuitively, and you don't know sometimes until you just start making, and then you think, oh yeah,
there it is.
And what I like doing is using different mediums, and so I love making ceramic things or wooden things or knit, but hopefully they all have that sort of thing flowing through them.
I feel like that too. Every book I use a different material, and I always think, oh, this is going to be so different, and then the book comes out and everyone's like, oh, you did your usual thing, and I bent it to this like 3 colors I like to use in the same shapes, and it's like, I tried sand this time or something really weird, and it still looks just like the same. But that's probably good.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's good for the people that your fans.
People who buy
the people that buy the things. And then before we finish up, you were telling me downstairs that you're really into doing more sort of animation and theatre, or you want to push.
Well, I started in animation, and then it's too complicated, I think, for me. As soon as I got into the books, it was like everything I liked about storytelling just distilled, and it was like you can hit these things much faster. And obviously the control that comes with doing your own books versus working in a studio with 300 people. But I like that too. I like being part of a team, and it's been so refreshing being part of even this team from a distance. Is like, I like collaboration, and I like sort of what we come up with together versus just on your own.
I know.
If you're in a garage by yourself, you go crazy, and like you come up with something, and if it's not liked, you don't have that sort of things to fall back on where you're like, we all liked this though, right? Like it's just me, and you're like, am I crazy? Did I lose my mind in my garage this time? And you don't know. But so even just getting back into like slightly broader, like I don't think I miss a 200-person team, but like a 5-person team is telling a story. Is really ideal, and setting that up, it's hard to set up, especially now. Animation is in a weird spot industry-wise, and so it's a weird time to get back into it. But it's also very interesting. There's a lot of Wild West feelings.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Maybe.
London people seem to understand my books better than the Americans do. And I come over here, everyone's like, oh, that's what you want to do, of course. And the Americans are like, you want to what? And no one understands what I want to do. But over here, it's just like, I don't know what it is. It's a sensibility thing where it's just, we have to have very short conversations before we get to something that we all like. Versus in the States, I have to just drag it out of them, and even then I don't win. And so it's been really nice spending time here with everybody, because I just feel like very, very
understood.
welcome. Understood and lucky. Yeah, I think those are the two words for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really nice place to end it on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
really
here.
fun.
I'm really excited for the work. It's been great to be here.